In choosing to watch these documentaries, you've shown you are looking for something. Entertainment, companionship, or maybe you're looking for answers. If you agree, you should know your own reasons for watching are the very qualities cult watchers say help some cults in their ever-increasing quest for new members.
People are much more at risk of being fodder for a cult than they suspect.
It was almost like a planned kidnapping, you know, that's how it felt. It felt like I was not there out of my own free will.
It might be a commercial cult, it might be a religious cult, it might be a self-help cult. They destroy your character, they destroy who you were.
It's the mind games is the worst, you know. It's just all mind control.
Cult watchers claim cults are on the rise, and there are certain characteristics that experts say they have in common. Although the organizations in this documentary may or may not be cults, former members say they have used cult-like techniques like love bombing, character assassination, fear and guilt. They claim they were manipulated by charismatic leaders promising the one true path, and that their goodwill and good nature were used against them, separating them from their families, their money, and at times, their sanity. They say these techniques can have devastating effects. They are the cultic danger signs, and understanding them is the key to understanding how you, your family or friends, could become trapped in a cult.
People who end up in cults or have close brushes with them are people for whom there's been some significant change in their lives. Now, that could be death of someone important, it could be loss of a job, it could be end of a relationship, it could be, and this is not an uncommon one, the transition from, say, secondary school to university.
I just moved to Auckland from Palmerston North. I was walking through Newmarket and someone approached me.
Hi, hello, how are you?
And I thought, oh, this is great, this is God speaking to me, this is a new church.
Are you a Christian?
I went along and they were really friendly, so I thought, well, this is cool. I'll try this out for a bit. It was quite a different style church to the Anglican one I'd grown up in, but I thought, you know, let's give it a go. So that's how they got me involved.
The International Church of Christ was set up in Boston, USA in the 1980s. It looked like a regular evangelical church, but was soon accused of using cult-like recruitment tactics.
I'm an extrovert, I love meeting people. I was new to a big city and I felt like a small fish in a big pond. I didn't have a lot of family there, was looking to make new friends, so perfect timing really. I was looking to meet people and they spotted that and they just went in for the kill.
The first cultic danger sign is love bombing. It is a conditional love. You will be surrounded by new friends who will turn on you if you do not conform.
Love bombing means instant friends. You join the group and instantly you have all these friends.
And if you come from a real loving home or a loving family sort of thing, you'd fit in with them. You know, you laughed at the same things, you cried at the same movies, you hugged each other all the time, you made food for each other. You saw somebody that was cold, you gave them your blanket, your shirt. What it is to be in a loving family.
Walesi left Auckland to join a Branch Davidian sect. The group that ended with the deaths of dozens of followers in Waco, Texas was initially warm and welcoming.
My elder brother was involved with them at the time. I was looking to hang out with people who weren't afraid of exploring their belief systems. And I thought, well, why not jump in, and got caught up in their lifestyle, which was vegetarian, or they made beautiful food. Lovely souls. Yeah.
While the Branch Davidians follow the Bible, Scientology is based on the writings of science fiction author L. Ron Hubbard. It's a religious movement that uses counseling, known as auditing, to help free members from the limiting effects of past experiences and lives. Former members claim they also experienced love bombing.
When you fall in love, you lose control of your senses. And this is like that. I'd never felt more loved in my life. You're the best person in the world. you have made the right choice.
You're wonderful, look how quickly you got through that course. You're amazing, you've got the idea of that. Oh, look what you can do now. Totally, totally love bombing, and it happens all the time when you first go in.
Suddenly your phone just doesn't stop ringing. There's somebody from America wants to see you, and that can be very appealing. A friend of mine bought a copy of the book Dianetics. I was just intrigued because it promised to be able to get you to a state known as clear, where you'd be able to have total recall, have a IQ in the stratosphere, and you'd have no psychosomatic illnesses and no neuroses of any sort whatsoever. And, you know, that's something I'd like for myself, but also I thought, well, that'd be something I'd like to be able to help other people to achieve.
I've always been an asthmatic, and I've always been told that Scientology could help my asthma. So I had a lot of auditing to do with that. We didn't have enough money to pay for any more courses because it's horrendously expensive. And so we were signed up on staff. We signed a 5-year contract, and we were trained, and I was trained to be an auditor, which is the word for counselling.
Auditors are trained to use the e-meter, a device like a lie detector Scientology says can measure the energy and mass of the pictures in your mind and is designed to help subjects go clear.
You go clear, you're not meant to have any psychosomatic illnesses anymore, you're meant to have a perfect memory. You sign these attestations and success stories to say that those things have actually happened to you. And then the next day, you're wheezing. And you think, oh, you know, there must be still some stuff there that we haven't found yet. You don't want to be a fraud. You don't want to admit to people that you've attested to something that you haven't actually quite got. So you just kind of keep it inside.
The loving welcome from a new group can hide its true nature. Lessons were learned in the 70s when an ordinary suburban Bible studies group in Christchurch developed into a heavily armed, apocalyptic cult living in a fortified compound.
Camp David was a group of people who came together to worship God, in theory, and fellowship together. When we first got there, men wore beards, women wore scarves and long hair. As things progressed, the men then had to wear a type of skull cap, I suppose, very colourful, very large, and you had to wear this wherever you were because that showed you were part of God's people.
I have to acknowledge that my marriage began there. My first 2 children were born while I was there. It's part of our family history. We had the last heraldic wedding, so we had all the knights and ladies, and we cut our wedding cake with a sword. A grand old wedding we did. We had radar mechanics, we had ground radio mechanics, and we had 3 or 4 engine mechanics and engine fitters. Very capable group. I was the upholsterer, so I upholstered this throne for Doug, and the 24 thrones for the elders.
Self-appointed Bishop Douglas Metcalfe was an Australian evangelist who claimed he was sent to save the faithful from the coming apocalypse.
We are sent to New Zealand at the present time. We may be sent to Australia later. Someone else may be raised up in Australia to give them this message. And someone else may be raised up in America or somewhere else to give them this message. But it's our place to preach this message here.
At that point, he was being taught as the secret Christ. He was addressed as Lord Yeshua, or Adonai Yeshua. He wanted to develop the kingdom of God 3 ways. Theologically, centred around himself, heraldically, and militarily. From 1974 on, when the purchase of ammunition goods and gunpowder and guns and weaponry accelerated enormously. A lot was kept on our West Coast property, some was kept on our farm itself. A lot of stuff was kept around our houses and hidden around the houses. I had 5 weapons myself, and I was one of the lesser. I don't know if anyone really knew how much we had.
A group hoarding guns and explosives can show the dangerous power of a charismatic leader.
On every newspaper and magazine.
Cult watchers warn of leaders becoming the object of worship. They call this danger sign the self-appointed charismatic leader.
It is almost a prerequisite for the success of a cultic organisation to have a lightning rod around which people can be drawn.
Centrepoint developed out of the 1970s fad for relationship counselling. The community would eventually be torn apart by child sex abuse prosecutions and drug convictions. Its self-appointed spiritual leader was ex-pest control salesman Bert Potter.
I think of him as a psychopath. You know, psychopathic people don't feel fear, they don't feel compassion, they don't feel remorse for hurting and doing harm. So he could be a stable, unemotional life raft when everything, your whole world, was just falling apart. And he had some kind of enjoyment in that.
Most cult leaders have pretty much all of the traits of your classic psychopath or your classic sociopath. These are people who are motivated by a need for power, so they can use it to manipulate, dominate and control. Now, all of these psychopaths think they're God. Cult leaders manage to convince other people they're God.
The group was growing. There were probably about 12 of us, and we all shared our ideas of our fantasy for the community.
Like an interconnected village.
And then Bert spoke up at the end and said, "You've all left out the most important bit. Not one of you has said that you're joining the community to be with me." And this is what's bizarre looking back. Why didn't I go, well, we didn't say that because that's not why we're joining? It's hard to explain what his power was, that everyone, quite able people, we're all professional or qualified in some way, all went, oh, no, we didn't. So that was a significant meeting at which he put himself in this power position, and we agreed to it. Bert didn't call himself the father, but he seemed like the strong one in all this emotional turmoil. People would quite often just sort of crawl across the room into his arms. So his charisma was very much hands-on, very personal.
It's better.
It was very childlike. It was just breakdown, breakdown, breakdown till you got into that childish, dependent state. And cults do that, create dependency. So that over a period of time, that feeling of, you know, I have to stay here, I can't leave.
Self-styled guru and psychotherapist Bert Potter and his Centrepoint community are in trouble with the locals yet again for allegedly preaching and publicly practicing sexual freedom.
I was born there, so it was very normal. There was nothing strange about living with several hundred other people and sharing the same living spaces, sleeping spaces, showering, bathrooms. There was one set up where they had like 4 toilets in one room, and people would just sit there and like do their business right across from each other. That was like the one that you avoided. You went to the one where you could actually like shut the door behind you, but that was how in each other's pockets were. The shower system was the same, and so I would be showering as a, 5 or 6 year old girl with 50-year-old men across from me and stuff like that. So it was very intimate and no privacy whatsoever. It was just, I guess, the philosophy that you should not have any of those boundaries, and if you felt uncomfortable about it, that was an issue in you. Yeah.
Today, charismatic leader Neville Cooper still runs the 400-strong Gloria Vale community on the West Coast. Known to followers as Hopeful Christian, he was sentenced to 5 years prison in 1995 for indecent assault, including against his own son. The convictions have not damaged his status as their spiritual leader.
My father is the God figure, so his word is law. It's either his way or the highway. The moment you leave, you're not his son. So that's how strong he believes. But if you go back there and go back under his control, you're welcomed back into his fold. And most of these fundamental fanatical groups have these very strong thou shalts or thou out. The power my dad had, he became so warped with his own self-imaging and own self-belief of what he was doing that it defied reasoning and logic. He was the law unto self. He changed from being this evangelistic pastor, Victorian-style principles on sex and marriage, to being extremist on the other side. It's open sex. You can have sex with your wife all in one room together with 10 other people all watching, and then to have him have sex with your mother in front of you as a child growing up just blew me away. He doesn't at all see that he's doing anything wrong. It's sex education. Doctors do it, so, well, I'm the head of the community, I'm above a doctor, I should be able to do it. I can give young girls talks on sex education, I can physically show them. The simple fact of the matter that I saw my father and having 13, 12-year-old girls in his bed. I saw that with my own eyes. If he sexually abused me, he would see that as, oh, it's my son, I was just helping him through something. As he always will tell you, God's law, which is his law, is greater than the law of the land. Because he feels he was following God's law and what he did, which was totally rubbish.
Scientology's charismatic leader, L. Ron Hubbard, is rumoured to have said, "The way to make $1 million is to start a religion." This has been denied by Scientology.
Lafayette Ronald Hubbard was an American, and he was a sci-fi writer. That's where he first started. So, yes, so science fiction. So you have to question a religion that comes out of science fiction, don't you? I mean, you do. And I should have, but I didn't.
This whole idea that what's going on in his head is senior to anything else that could possibly be happening, where he has a right to determine the future history of not just planet Earth, but the whole galaxy. Now, because that's so foreign to Joe Citizen, you can't imagine that somebody would have that mindset. And so you're not expecting somebody to come along and screw with your life the way Hitler did and the way Hubbard would if he could.
What you've got to understand about Metcalfe was he's a very charismatic person. He had the way with him that you always felt important whenever he was around and that you wanted to please him.
We used to wash each other's feet, which was quite a humbling kind of thing to do for each other. You can imagine the effort and strive that people would want to be the one to wash his feet. And this particular woman, she was so desperate to wash his feet, but he'd already been done by somebody, and he had his shoes and socks on. So he put his shoes and socks and all straight into the bowl to protest at the same time, make a bit of fun. And of course, it brought the house down. And he would do something like that, and you'd have a great deal of fun. He was really a people pleaser, quite addicted to the approval and adulation of other people, to the point where I think that's really what got him. He developed the idea of the kingdom of God, and that the farm was the kingdom of God. It was really the kingdom of Doug.
Another leader who saw his compound as his kingdom was David Koresh, who believed himself to be a branch Davidian prophet and was originally known as Vernon Howell.
He was treated as a living prophet. He's a lovely young fella, just like me at the time, and we were having children at about the same time period as well. Overall, he's a decent person. Yeah. When he started calling himself David Koresh, and I had always seen him as Vernon Howell, that's when the teachings that he said was new, that was coming from God to him, that's when we sort of parted in terms of our beliefs. When people give of themselves and get to the point they say, well, I can't trust my own thinking, I'll let you do the thinking for me. And what you say is going to be okay, I'll back you up all the way. When that takes place, even in our own relationships, we have a problem. He taught about dying and then coming back. When he comes back, he'll come back to judge the world.
Like other leaders, Koresh was convinced he alone knew the one true path to glory, a path which many at Waco followed at great cost.
A group that tells you they are the only way to God or salvation are showing a cultic danger sign. Cult watchers call this the one true path.
We were in the East waiting, we were his chosen ones, we were his prophets, and we were going to be there waiting for him in his glory when he arrived. Nobody else was going to be there, just us. So we were pretty special.
It is almost always the case that a cult belief system is a fundamentalist one. It isn't just saying this is a way to think of the world, it is saying this is the only way to think of the world.
Born into the exclusive brethren, the 7 sons of the Murray family see the one true path as a key part of their upbringing.
When you're in the church, you think you're better than everyone else. You're happy, everything's all good in there. You're the group that's going to go to heaven. You're the elite ones. Everyone else is a worldly. We never ate with any other kids at morning tea time. We sat back in class. Everyone else went outside and had their morning tea and that. And we used to sit just on our own. The brethren are very judgmental. You judge other kids, you think, oh yeah, they don't know what I know.
I always thought I was a bit better than other people in my class and school and whatever, because we never mixed. I never went to their house to play or anything, and they never came to my house to play. I used to wish they could. In fact, one time I invited a whole lot of girls to a party. I was my 8th birthday party or something, and I completely fabricated the whole story. And then 10 days later I had to turn around and say, I'm sorry, I'm not having the party now.
World leader Bruce Hale says the policy of separation, eating and drinking only with brethren, is based on scripture and distinctions between good and evil. He says brethren do not believe that only brethren will be in heaven.
Exclusive brethren to me is a group of people that believe in a certain beliefs based on the fact that they have a leader who gets the direct word from Jesus, so to speak. Prior to probably 1960, I would say it was a fairly right-wing fundamentalist church. Then one particular world leader brought in the theory about only eating and drinking with those that you break bread or have Holy Communion with. Since then, it's sort of become very culty. James Taylor Sr. was one of the world leaders, and he was a drunk. One thing they did was introduce alcohol, when honestly I was drinking whiskey at 13 and 14. We were literally forced to drink it, which was absolutely ridiculous.
Drink it back. Yeah, there's a lot of alcohol going on there, eh? That's a big thing in there, especially the young people now. They get on it. They get on it hard.
Old ladies were made to drink it, and they hadn't probably touched the stuff their whole life, you know, might have had a sip of port or something, but literally we were forced to have it. And if you didn't have it, there was something wrong with you. It was actually made an issue. There was something wrong with you because you wouldn't drink.
You got nothing to free your mind. You can't go out there, you can't go watch a movie, you can't have big projects or anything going on. That's outside of the church sort of rules and regulations. There's no freedom.
Brethren elders say a former world leader exposed the fallacy of prohibition. And while alcohol is available from a responsible age, moderation is promoted, and alcoholism is not common.
I believe it's a cult. I've done a tremendous amount of reading about other cult groups, and I believe they're all based on the same principles, but they have different doctrine. And they all believe that they've got the greatest light, and they are the ones.
Brethren elders strongly refute that description of the fellowship. They say that each member controls his or her life, and they are constructive and contributing members of society.
One of the things that they would say is that, there are lots of well-meaning people out there in those other churches, but you're only going to be saved if you're a member of the International Church of Christ. Every other church is wrong. Yeah, we're the only ones that know the truth. They encouraged me to go into the church, and they, yes, you're a Christian, la, la, la. But then later on they said, well, actually, because you're not a member of our church and because you don't believe these specific things we believe, you're not. And that's one of the ways they can try and trap people to stay, because they're made to feel that if they're not in this group, then they're not a Christian and then they're not saved. And so it's all about fear and all about manipulation.
The idea of binding yourself to the group has recently been used in the Destiny Church, when 700 members pledged allegiance to Brian Tamaki.
I'll put this on the record, I think Destiny Church can be a bit borderline. And with some of the things that it does?
His whole presentation of image, the adulation that's given to him by his members, the authority that he has. He tells his people, right, come down and do a protest in Wellington, they're all here in force, all dressed the same. They have willingly given Brian their support and their commitment. And society can handle that to a degree because at the same time, certain lives, like in our group, which were quite bad before, are being transformed.
How much further is this going to go before you start utilising the term cult? Doesn't seem to have enough of the necessary ingredients yet, but it's heading in that direction.
Brian Tamaki says that Destiny is an open church, not a closed community, and is no different to mainstream churches.
You can't be a Christian and be a Scientologist because they think Christianity is actually something that's happened to us millions of years ago by aliens, implanting us with the idea of Jesus.
Scientology states it honours and respects Jesus Christ as a great religious leader, and to say otherwise is untrue.
It's easy when you're on the outside looking in to stereotype a belief system as being crazy. The thing that we lack, but the person in that context actually has, is that this isn't immediate. The first thing presented to them is not the idea that in fact your body is inhabited by a bunch of alien spirits who are actually causing all of the bad things that have happened to you. It builds up to that.
Part of the Scientology indoctrination is to paralyse your critical intelligence.
Have you ever castrated anyone?
Of course not.
So therefore, while you are connected with Scientologists, everything has to be positive. And if it's not, then there's a process that you need to introvert and find what you've done wrong to cause you to be critical. It is very dangerous.
Critics claim that Scientology positions its way as the only way through front organisations. But Scientology says their members are active in these groups to help improve social conditions and are independent of the church. One such group, CCHR, aims to expose and eradicate the criminal acts and human rights abuses of psychiatry.
I worked for a group called the Citizens Commission on Human Rights. Hubbard saw other mental health practices as a threat to the existence of Scientology. Our aim was to eradicate psychiatry from New Zealand society, make it a psych-free society. At the time, I thought, well, what happens if we achieve that? What happens to New Zealand when somebody does need mental health care? What do we do with those people?
It's like Coke versus Pepsi. One of the first things they have to eliminate is the opposition, which is psychiatry, who, at the moment, are getting government funding, which Scientology would dearly love to have.
One True Path emphasises the dangers of alternate or competing beliefs, and is often used with the cultic tools of fear and guilt.
Fear and guilt can be used to divide and rule. Some experts say a group or leader who makes you feel scared or guilty is trying to control you.
Now, the leaders are held up to be closer to God than you are, and they must be obeyed. If you don't obey them, then you are told that maybe God will curse you or terrible things will happen to you. There is fear involved in confronting the leaders.
There's a facade of love and euphoria and happiness and bright-eyed sparkliness and touching and closeness. But behind that, the shadow side of it, always working with fear and control. One woman had to build herself a wooden cross and carry it round because he said she was too much of a martyr.
It wasn't loving. It was attacking, and it was you're evil and you're the devil and you're going to go to hell and you're not allowed to talk to your family anymore because they're going to persecute you. And of course there's the fear of, you know, you die and you're going to hell, but it actually wasn't about that. It was like immediate fear about being treated like you were nothing. Yeah, that's what made me scared.
You try and do something out of the ordinary, something that you're told not to do, and you just feel this guilt and all this fear come on you. And that's how it's controlled. It's the mind games is the worst, you know. It's just all mind control. The more mind control they have, the more power they got, you know.
It's just like the guilt that you feel if you like swear or something. Oh no, God's going to punish me.
The new leader, James Symington, took over, and he started bringing in some pretty arrogant sort of rules and things, and all of a sudden you were being made to confess about all sorts of things. You'd have guilt and fear put on you. A lot of sexual sins, whether a couple had touched over the clothes on their genitals or under their clothes, and you'd have to get the priest come round and interrogate you, and then you would be publicly humiliated. It would be brought up in church. You kept conforming, and the leader would tell us, oh, we're substandard, we need to attain to this standard. And so you would do everything you possibly could to attain to that standard, and just when you thought you'd got there, all of a sudden they'd pull the rug out from under your feet and say, no, you're not good enough. And you think, oh my goodness, what else do I need to do?
Many organisations have a layer of enforcers, people who are part of the inner sanctum, whose job it is to enforce the rules.
That's what you're afraid of, those interrogation of having to stand in a room of, 100 blokes all staring down at you, all judging you, all wanting to pull the rug from under you. Because I remember when I was 17, I was in one of those meetings because I was wanting to leave again. And these men's meetings, I'm the most evil, wicked thing that walked the earth. When I leave, I'm going to have a major accident, I'm going to go to hell. So I've got this whole fear thing, right? And I get up and go down and pack my bags. Then, reverse psychology. He sent my sisters and mother down to cry and plead with me, why are you leaving, you know what I mean? Well, that time it's, 10 hours later and I'm sheer exhausted, you break. So I conformed.
The pressure went on to expand, sell, to get more people in, to get more money in, to sell books. I think the worst thing that happened to me at that time was I was pregnant with my son, and everything was measured in statistics. They were dropping for the counselling hours. L. Ron Hubbard's writings say if the statistics aren't going up, then there's a person in there actively suppressing.
Jenny, I need you to explain about the stats.
I was called to a committee of evidence, which is like a court. You're between a rock and a hard place. If you say, no, I'm not actively suppressing them, look at me, I'm here every day working my butt off for you guys, then you're saying the technology's wrong, which is actually worse.
I'm beginning to wonder if you're doing it intentionally.
But I am working really long days.
The stats are down, Jenny.
I'll never forget just sitting there thinking, how can you say that to me? I'm here every day for no pay, for 12 hours a day, working with people who are unusual to say the least. You actually begin to wonder if things have happened to you that you didn't know. When you were asleep, you don't know if you've actually been kidnapped by aliens and planted thoughts in your mind to destroy Scientology. You don't know. You don't trust anybody, you don't even trust yourself. So you're on the cans and you might have never had thoughts of leaving. If the needle's reading and they go, oh, tell me more about that, then the story comes into your mind, whether you're making it up or it's imagination, and you have this memory and you say it all.
I was 8 years old. I thought the world was going to come to an end. I stopped.
And then you go, oh my God, I don't remember that happening, but it was there.
Some organisations put potential members through a process by which actually it might sound like therapy, it might sound like trying to work out what we can do to help you, but actually a lot of it is organised around trying to get information that can ultimately be used to manipulate or to blackmail that person.
Have you ever had adulterous thoughts?
Yes, at times.
Have you had an affair?
Have you murdered people? Have you stolen money? Basically anything that anyone could have done that they perhaps wouldn't want everybody to know about. Scientology will tell you that it's kept securely in their, locked up things to be never shown to the public or never discussed or anything like that. And that's far from the truth. As soon as somebody gets out of Scientology and speaks out about it, they will, what they call, cull your folders, which means they go through looking for the stuff that you've brought out in your confessionals that would be embarrassing. Now, for example, if you had an affair, then of course just hinting that you know that and the person is still married to the partner that they weren't faithful to is enough to get them to shut up. And that's done often in Scientology.
Scientology leaders say they do not believe that staff are made to feel guilty for leaving. nor that they are put under undue pressure to recruit or sell courses. They say the use or release of private information is strictly against the auditor's code, which requires auditors to treat communications with total confidentiality. They say the Church of Scientology has gone to considerable lengths to ensure that these records remain strictly confidential. But former members say character assassination was used to keep them silent, compliant, and destroy their self-esteem.
The lower your self-worth, the easier it is to control you. And the easiest way to grind you down is out-and-out abuse. Cult watchers call this character assassination.
You'll ask a question or question the leaders, and they will attack your character. So rather than give you a rational response, they'll actually attack you. You're a bad person. There is something wrong with you. You're prideful. The reason you are thinking this is because you want to take my position and you want everyone to think you're great. You know, you really need to go away and think about this, you despicable person. And if you come across character assassination, you're almost certainly dealing with a cultic environment.
When you're new, everything's smiley and happy. Now, the moment you sign a contract to be on staff, when things don't go right, you are responsible for it.
Do you have bad thoughts?
No.
Do you have suppressive thoughts?
Absolutely not. I was taken into a room by 3 women who were all dressed in these like Navy-style uniforms. They had their reasons, which they weren't making clear to me, but their job was to make me break down.
Have you ever killed someone?
No!
Have you ever tried hurting Scientology?
No, I'm not lying!
Masturbated?
No, I haven't! Oh, it's just endless. Just whatever, you know, whatever you wouldn't want somebody to yell at you, they were yelling it out.
I had a view of myself that was really encouraged by Bert. If I left, I would just become depressed.
You'll struggle without it, you know.
It was a fear for me. And so he would feed that fear. If you leave, you'll become depressed, you won't cope. Other people told me that he would say, if you leave, you'll get cancer.
It's like an abusive relationship. You keep hoping it's going to get better. If you just give a little bit more, if you just try a little bit harder, this is going to get better. It's all your fault that he's cruel to you. It's all your fault that this is not working out. It is textbook abusive relationship material. Dad had a basketball game in the morning before church, and you know they'd arrange these types of activities to encourage outsiders to come along. And the next thing you know, I had a couple of the other women say, right, you need to come with us. They got me in a car, didn't tell me where they were taking me. It was almost like a planned kidnapping, that's how it felt. It felt like I was not there out of my own free will. I had no idea where I was, and it was a really scary experience. So yeah, they took me in this car, they sat me down, they made me do a spiritual timeline, they took me through all the different parts of my life, and then they said to me, all these things are really great, but none of it means you're a Christian.
You have to let go of everything from the past. Hell, Rachel.
They started talking about how my parents were going to hate me for joining this group. They were going to go to hell. Talking about all my different youth leaders I'd had in my past and how they were all going to hell. And I was stuck in this house. I had no idea where I was, and I was just in tears. And it's the whole breaking thing that they do. Then it's a case of we've broken you and now we're going to fix it. They looked at that as the catalyst for me then joining the church. For me, it was the catalyst to leave. It was the final point where I said, no, this is not cool.
The Auckland Central Church of Christ has broken away from the ICOC and says it is no longer affiliated with those who operate in a controlling or cult-like fashion. At the Branch Davidian compound in Waco, Texas, David Koresh's character attacks on his followers led them to something far more serious.
It'll come down to a gunfight. That was David Koresh's message. Last time I was there, he was waving an AK-47 around and pointing it straight at me, threatening my family. It's another way of brainwashing. Follow the rest of us, and no harm will come to you. You're living in a community who teaches love and sacrifice. But they also taught a lot about war, which was a big part of David Koresh's teachings at the end.
Most cults have this idea as central to their thinking that they're being persecuted by some outside force, and it's usually when this paranoia gets too big, this is when we see the real tragedies.
Well, I knew where he was going. It was all in the teachings. And that was when I started seeing ladies being separated from their partners, and they lived in different quarters, and the men lived in different quarters altogether. And the separations of children and their parents. If somebody tells you this is okay because God says it's okay, and what they're saying is that, oh, you're allowed to go and have sex with a 12-year-old, and not just that one, and the mother, and, and you carry on. Once you cross over that, you're in no man's land. I was surprised that the government agencies that went there hadn't had the ability to actually listen, because we did warn them. What was sad for me was that there were those that I went to on the same trip who wanted to stay, and I told them from my heart that I was leaving and they needed to leave with me. But two decided to stay on, and I came back with my partner at the time. That was it. I don't blame him. I used to at one stage, but then it dawned on me that everybody that was there gave him the power to maintain that course. And if you're given the right to go down that direction by all those that are following, all those who think likewise, then that's the course you stay. But to see a lot of my family and friends die in there, children growing up without their parents, families who have been broken up, whole families who have died. All I saw was that their will to think consciously away from that environment would have made a huge change.
In New Zealand, Camp David was also gathering weapons for Judgment Day. But former members believe 2 police raids and confiscations of stockpiled weapons helped avert a Waco-like siege for the God Squad.
If we'd had a bit more focus like the chap at Waco did, it could distinctly have happened.
He showed us a tape of Koresh at one stage and said we might have to defend this place, and that was not what most of us wanted to do.
I sit back and I say, thank God, because we could have done it. I think we could have easily done it.
In extreme cases, a cult can be a danger to society. But most often, the real danger is to its own people. Followers say that after a cult has hooked you in, mind control techniques make it extremely hard to leave.
We didn't just leave, we had to actually escape.
You've actually sold your soul to someone else.
He raped her and then said, if you tell anybody, I'll take you to the hills and kill you.
If you want to break someone, sexual abuse appears to be the way to do it.
Feels a bit like being fed to the wolves. It's really hard.
My name is Jenny. I'm from Christchurch, New Zealand. I was a Scientologist in Sydney from 78 to 83. I've come over here to help get you out.
This second documentary is about former members of organisations they describe as cults. While these groups may or may not be cults, the followers claim they were subject to information control, time control, and relationship control. They say they were victims of hidden agendas, and once trapped inside the cult were coerced to stay. They say that these techniques can rob you or your loved ones of your free will, self-esteem, and ability to think. On the inside, believers may think however bad life is, escape will be worse. Cult experts tell us this belief is a consequence of mind control.
I recently went to Sydney with my daughter. We wanted to meet her grandfather, who she's never seen ever because he went over 20 odd years ago. And we stood outside the building and chanted for him to come out. She's never met him to this day. So whether or not the people themselves don't want to see their family or they're stopped is still a bit of a mystery, but I think it's a bit of both.
Scientology, a religion based around counselling and personal growth, has churches based in Auckland and Sydney.
People say, you know, you were there on your own volition and you could have left at any time. People talk about these concepts of power and control like it's real simple, and it's not. It was like being hypnotised, it was like being drugged without the drug.
Something like Scientology comes along out of left field and you're suddenly involved in space opera. You lose your mind. You end up as an identity as a Scientologist. And you will hang on to that till your last breath, because if somebody takes that identity away from you, you are left naked against the universe.
You really think that if you don't get it, if you don't get your shot of Scientology, be it a book, be it a course, be it helping out on stuff, that you're not going to go totally free. So you're now phobic about leaving Scientology, and you really are. I was so terrified to leave. Not because of what the group would do to me, but because what about my eternity? It's a big question.
Mind control is a name for a series of techniques used to manipulate and control people.
Who you can talk to, who you can't, how often you can spend time alone, if at all.
Do what I say or I'm going to take your family away. You do what I say or you're going to hell.
One of the ways to control what people think is to control what they think about.
Cult watchers say a cult will restrict your access to outside media and other perspectives. This danger sign is a mind control technique they call information control.
Growing up, we had newspaper only. Our books we read were quite limited, unless you could sneak a few from the school library or something.
The Exclusive Brethren is a Christian sect that describes non-followers as worldlies.
They're very scared of the media. It's evil, there's pornography, there is all sorts of dreadful things happening out there.
I always thought if I came close like a TV, the devil would start speaking to me through the TV. That's why I never went near them. I was just too scared.
You see one and guilt and fear just drove you away from it. It was just built into you. It's just built into you all the time, into your head. A few weeks after we got out of it, man, we just into the movies. We watched more movies than anyone else has ever watched movies in history. It's just insane. We're just glued to the goggle box, hard out, just taking it all in. Oh man, this is so cool. And after a few months, we just got sick of it.
For years and years, you just denied the information. And it's only when you get out for long enough to go on the internet where you can read some of the horror stories of what have happened to people in Scientology that you go, I've been conned.
Ex-Scientologists claim that one control system is the church's legal and investigations arm, the Office of Special Affairs.
They act like military police, and they dress like a military police. They could just walk in, they could just pick up folders, drag anyone off for a sec check. They were usually quite big too, quite sort of big, strong guys. They would come out in their navy uniforms, complete with cap. What they said went. I was terrified of them. So was everyone else.
Scientology says Special Affairs staff do not have the authority to order confessional sessions and says they're a religious service done for spiritual gain.
To compound the fear and isolation caused by information control, you may be kept exhausted. Lack of sleep and endless work are a danger sign called time control.
If you keep people tired, they're going to lose their perspective on what's actually normal.
Time control is essential and very easy to understand. If I can keep you so busy with group activities, you won't have time to think about your involvement. I'll also keep you very tired, so you won't have the capacity to think clearly.
They would call it being monastic, you know, getting up at 4 in the morning to pray and not eating enough and eating no protein. This is an ascetic lifestyle, but they're utilising it as a form of control.
Near Christchurch in the 70s, Bishop Douglas Metcalfe's mighty men were worked around the clock to construct the fortified Camp David before the coming apocalypse.
Most guys would have a job during the day, and then around evening time we would gather together in our vehicles and travel up in convoy using walkie-talkie radios between them, and we would stop at Woodend, get fish and chips and work until around about midnight and then drive back down. Later on we would sleep up there overnight and head back early in the morning. Depends on what sort of job you had. We would burn the candle at both ends for quite a long time, doing whatever took his fancy.
Lost and exhausted, the next step is to isolate you from the outside world, particularly friends and loved ones. Experts call this danger sign relationship control.
Relationship control is key to manipulating and controlling your members. You want to ensure that the members do not see people who might question your leadership. You want to manipulate things so that the group becomes their new family.
As individuals, you had no close friendships because Metcalfe would come and split people up so that you didn't form close friendships because he didn't want people talking about what was going on. He didn't want people to form friendships with this woman because he was having sex with her, and he didn't want anything to slip out to talk to this other person. So it was all very individual.
They have to have control over everything you do, because if you go outside of it, then the outside people are going to find out what is actually going on inside.
Yeah, stuck the flip. How do you feel, man? Yeah, bitch. Yeah.
We're all into motocross tonight. We've got dirt bikes, and we never used to be allowed to do that in there. I mean, I had some old farm bikes and that sort of thing, but we'd never let it go out there and have competitions and go out and race and shows and stuff. That was, that was evil, That's against their rule of separation.
When one member of the Murray family needed non-church approved treatment for a health issue, they confessed to an unrelated sin and were shut up.
We knew the brethren would kick us out because we just felt we were on the outer all the time for whatever reason. So they did. They shut us up, which is like being suspended. And a year later I made the decision to not return to the brethren. But the loss of my family and some of my close friends where we were living was just, you can't describe it. I was so screwed up in the head. I get on so well with my brothers and sisters, and we all love each other. But because I won't go back in, I no longer can have anything to do with them. And my children don't have anything to do with their cousins.
They control your information and your hours of sleep. But for some members, it's the relationship control that can have the worst effect.
You must cut all ties with your old life. We are your family now.
The first time someone comes up to you, if they say your family is evil, you're not going to listen to them. And this is one of the reasons why we find it so hard to understand why people would believe this sort of thing. It's a gradual process of replacement of whatever it is that you have had in your life previously with something new, to the point where the suggestion that maybe your family actually isn't the best thing for you actually makes sense.
My sister, she used to send me tapes of just her talking. It was so much more powerful than a letter. Just to hear her voice and hear her children in the background, her music playing. I used to cry something chronic. Just missing the family, and then I just go, stop it. It's not important. This is what we're doing is the greatest good. Just stop it. And I just managed to just control it.
Based in Gloriavale, an isolated South Island farm, the Cooperites are led by former evangelist Neville Cooper, now known as Hopeful Christian.
lot of my family have left, but as far as he is concerned, there's no more communication.
If we fulfill
the moment you leave, you're not his son. I look at a couple of my brothers that have left. They're only 17, 18, they left. And my brother who took his life, that was one of the biggest things he faced, the suddenly cut off, or the isolation of suddenly being rejected. You know, my brother couldn't handle that.
Part of becoming on staff is you need to deal with your parents. If they don't want you to be on staff, you have to handle them or disconnect from them. Handle them means give them information about Scientology, bring them round, bring them in, that's the optimum, or you disconnect from them. A young girl came in, she was early 20s, our age. She was from a religious family. She didn't want to handle them and she didn't want to disconnect from them. So she was under enormous pressure to do this and she hung herself. We were told to remove all traces of Scientology from our flat, so it couldn't be linked. And then we were told her boyfriend, who was our flatmate, he went to her flat and got rid of all her Scientology stuff that she had there. Huge cover over. This beautiful, beautiful girl killed herself. And we just carried on like nothing had happened.
This incident happened in 1980. An affidavit from the woman's boyfriend says there was no attempted cover-up. Scientology leaders say they cooperated fully with officials and members were not told to clear any materials out. They state that Jenny is inventing the conspiracy. But Scientology is not the only organisation ex-members accuse of mishandling mental health. Although they deny it, Avatar Masters have been accused of using relationship control.
Avatar have this thing called enlightened planetary civilization, and what they're basically saying is you're one of the chosen few. And if you only listen to what Harry Palmer says and you do these $20,000 worth of courses, then you will be enlightened.
After 10 years as a Scientologist, Harry Palmer created the self-development Avatar program. His company, Stars Edge International, trains and licenses Avatar Masters.
I think it's very easy to get caught up in something where you are part of an elite group of people that are working for the greater good of mankind, and only by using this package are you going to get there.
Like Scientology, Avatar offers self-help therapy without the stigma of conventional psychology.
I think what people found quite exciting about the Avatar program was that you didn't have to go through years of visiting a psychologist or a psychiatrist dealing with past traumas or past stuff, because the Avatar materials basically said it's just a belief that these things affect you, so if you let that belief go, then you're in the present moment, you don't have anything to worry about, you can create whatever you like.
So I will write up these affirmations, you know, I'm a millionaire, I'm sexy, all women love me and people fall at my feet, and now I'm going to go and create this universe and this reality.
Part of the agreement that you sign is that they are not liable for any fallout, and that if you have got a history of psychiatric illness or instability in any way, they take no responsibility for it.
You know, I would not have let vulnerable people on the course. The problem is that it's the exact opposite. They actually advertise that you can get healing from your psychological issues. You can stop taking your medication. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. What I'm saying is it's dangerous, because what they're supplanting with is even more dangerous than the psychological drugs they're taking. There were several people in the course who just either dropped out or who had quite painful emotional experiences which, to my personal belief, they didn't handle properly.
One woman in particular, Alison, had a complicated history of depression and mental illness and died several months later.
Alison committed suicide. If someone who's had a fair amount of depression in their lives, and I don't know whatever personal upset she has, after doing a course that opens them up, they'll kill themselves. Sure, it's a contributing factor. I don't think there's any doubt in that.
In Scientology, it's not just the therapy that former members criticize. It's how easy it is to become a therapist.
If you read Dianetics and you're willing to risk another person's sanity, you're an auditor. Anybody can pick up the book and just run it on somebody. Of course, the nightmare is that the person that you're auditing will have a psychotic break. The whole time you're in Scientology, you see hints of tragedies. You see people's lives that have been ruined, particularly at their delivery building in Florida, where I worked. It's called Flag. A lot of people, they go insane. They start talking to imaginary people or tell everyone that they are actually L. Ron Hubbard. Just anything that's just completely, obviously not the case. So it becomes an embarrassment to Scientology because they don't want the other public to see that what they're about to pay for has just driven somebody to, being a vegetable. So the first priority is to hide that person, and that's where that babysitting thing comes in. Here in Auckland, I got a phone call from the Office of Special Affairs here to go and pick him up, a guy who went nuts. He'd set off from Auckland walking to Hamilton, and he got as far as Hurnua, gone into a factory and phoned Scientology. So I was sent down to get this guy and bring him back, and he was just a nutcase. He was a basket case. So I took him up to the Office of Special Affairs. I was aware that the Office of Special Affairs got him to sign a declaration that Scientology had not driven him insane.
Scientology says this person had a history of depression and that they helped him get medical attention per church policy. They also deny he was asked to sign any such statement and say the rest of Lance's claims are untrue and are specifically denied. The leader of Auckland's Centrepoint commune, Bert Potter, focused his community's attention on 1970s relationship counselling.
If Bert wanted somebody off his case, he could always just give your partner a task to do this, and then that's all you're thinking about.
You're to sleep with 6 men by the end of the week. Okay?
He would give one member of a couple the task to go and have sex with 6 men this week.
Okay, Ben.
And the partner, you're not to have any sex with anybody this week. It would all be put in like a profound psychological, spiritual goal out of this, but really it just, what else would that couple be thinking about that week? They wouldn't be saying, what are you doing with the money?
A key relationship in any organisation is with the leader. But ex-members say there comes a point in a cult when you realise the leader has been lying to you.
As a leader learns they can manipulate you, new motivations may begin to emerge. A key sign of a cultic environment is a hidden agenda. You may soon discover your leader has been writing his own rules.
They need to deceive you. They need to appear as one thing, the great group who's helping world peace, or the great group who's helping cure drug addicts, when in reality they're perhaps a money-grubbing group that wants to get you involved so they can get their hands on your bank account.
It wasn't until the place broke up that we discovered things were not as we thought they were. They were living, would you call it the high life? I'm not sure, but they had everything, while others lived in tents, buses and caravans. And you'd hear on the radio from the house, oh, Daryl, on your way home, can you pick up a couple of punches of banana and a bottle of cream and some strawberries? And I'm sitting there thinking, I can't even afford one banana, and they're buying bunches of bananas. We shopped in second-hand shops, and that's how we survived. Whereas Metcalf had a bag full of cash, because everything was handed over in cash. There was no cheques, no putting it into your bank account. It was all cash in hand, and we reckon he probably had $20 million over a period of time. Easy.
A cult leader has 3 key motivations usually: gold, glory, or girls. In other words, money, power, or sex.
I think Palmer found the way to deal with people's suffering and make a huge amount of money out of it. And it was like bingo, he'd hit the jackpot.
You've come to get this specific key, and you've agreed to pay $1,000, and you've almost got the key, but the key is now promised in the next course, which is $3,000. You get caught. You're constantly going for this key. They give you more information surrounding the key, but they never give you the key. The key is in the next course. Listen, when you get the key is really simple. You're infested by aliens. That's why you can't get your primaries. It's sick. If that's the final truth you're paying $20,000 or $80,000 for, let's tell the world that now. Don't waste your money.
To get to the top of the bridge of Scientology, you're talking about $300,000 US.
They're out to make money. They're seriously into money, business, school. They're going to make this thing work.
In 2005, 7 elders of the Exclusive Brethren drew media attention for meeting with National Party leaders and for funding an anti-green election campaign.
The minute I knew that they were getting involved in politics, that was a red flag.
They just wanted to assure me that they were praying for the National Party and praying for the leadership of the National Party.
They get little laws changed for their tax things or for their not allowing union guys onto your property if they've had all that stuff passed just purely for them.
Brethren elders say their church is apolitical, teaching biblical principles around working hard to get ahead. They say the businessmen who made political donations have that right as taxpayers.
Sure, everyone's allowed to represent themselves in Parliament or take submissions to Parliament, etc. I think there's probably a bit more of a sinister thing than a lot of people realise. I know that they've done it in the Australian government, they did in the American government. It's just basically a money thing. It's a big, power, money go together. That's just my opinion on that.
Experts identify hidden agendas as a key danger sign. Many cults collapse amid accusations of hypocrisy, corruption, and in the worst cases, sex abuse.
It's not uncommon for the cult leader to have unrestricted access to sex with members of the cult, but there'll be prescriptions against other cult members having exactly the same sorts of freedoms.
In the meetings, he had a code word for whoever he wanted to take there that night. If he ordered coffee for supper, it was so-and-so. If he ordered Milo, it was that one over there, or if he wanted green tea, it was that one over there. One day, one of the young women said to one of the other women what had happened to her when she was 13. He raped her and then said, if you tell anybody, I'll take you up to the hills and kill you. Simple as that. And that just blew the whole thing wide open. Everybody just left.
Tragically, many leaders who exhibit cult-like behaviour take their absolute freedom to its taboo-breaking extreme. Too often, the sexual abuse of children.
When I got to Centreport, the children, there was thieving, there was all sorts of stuff that to me meant these children are not okay. I went to what would have been the head woman and her second in command, and I said, something is not right with the children here. And they both turned on me and went, you're projecting your own pain onto these children. Go away and sort out your own problem. It would say that they're not your children, they're the community's children.
It was a nudist community, so there was quite a big set-up like swimming pool and spa and things like that, so it's just so normal for me to shower with another man, so it was not abnormal to see like a 50-year-old man naked with a 5-year-old child on his knee.
At one phase, a couple of other women and myself formed a committee about that there wasn't to be any adult child sex. But I was still naive enough to believe that if we made a rule like that and that it would stop. But, you know, what I know now is it all went underground, so it was very covert.
None of the generation of children born at Centrepoint have spoken publicly about the abuse they endured, until now.
It's just so weird being like piled into a van and being taken away to a cabin. We were getting away, we were going somewhere new, somewhere exciting, and it was still a holiday even though there might have been strange things happening. When I ask Mum about it, I'm like, why was I sleeping in the same bed as a 40, 50-year-old man? How did you not find that strange? And their take on it was just, this is such a lovely arrangement that, you know, we've got these lovely men who are so caring and kind and want to spend so much time with the kids, and, you know, it's sort of this sharing parental system, and how nice. I was probably about 6 or 7. Feels a bit like being fed to the wolves. It's really hard. Yeah. But in retrospect, you cannot understand. It's really hard to make sense of it.
We had a big confrontation with Bert.
They're just hang-ups.
Just gone too far. I will not let this go on.
He was furious and stomped out of the community and went to live in a house up the hill, and said that those interested in their spiritual development should come and visit him there. Well, not many people did, and he got quite bored. So he came back down and lectured us all, but that's when he found drugs. Got access to big quantities of ecstasy and LSD. So then he started tempting people up the hill with drugs, and particularly offering drugs to teenage girls. So it sort of went in different phases. The place was just awash with LSD and ecstasy and ketamine. It was just crazy. And this is binding the community around an illegal secret. Then there were huge police raids and 140 police officers and helicopters and dogs, and there were criminal cases around the drugs, and he was imprisoned for that. Then the cases started about child sexual abuse.
In 1992, Bert Potter was sentenced to 7.5 years in prison for indecently assaulting 5 minors. 6 other men were also charged and convicted. Potter maintains he did nothing wrong.
Once you are inside a cultic environment, they will not want you to leave. Cult watchers call this danger sign coerced to stay. A leader may do whatever they can to keep you.
If you leave this place, you won't be saved. That means your parents won't be saved, your brothers and sisters won't be saved. And if you leave, it's on your head that all these people will not go to heaven, they'll go to hell.
The research which has looked at the integration of people who've been long-standing cult members back into a non-cult society says that there are, this is just as traumatic a transition as someone who's spent a long time in prison, except for the fact that people in prison are actually prepared as much as is possible for reintegration.
You know, people say, oh, why don't they just leave? You can't leave. So much psychological baggage keeping you there. All the what-ifs. All the doubts about yourself. A lot of these people can't even live. They've never bought, I mean, here was I standing in the supermarket, what sort of bread? A lot of people haven't even bought bread. There's people that have been in all their lives. It's just on the table. They wouldn't know where it came from. They don't know how to make form a relationship with somebody. So how can they live in the outside world? And especially when they're told that people in the outside world are all SPs, suppressive persons. You do so believe this. So why leave? Mum came over to help me with the baby, and prior to his birth I was moved up to case supervisor, so I could do that at home. The folders were being delivered. I had time to walk along the beach. I was walking along Bondi Beach and I was looking at people and I was thinking, you haven't got Scientology, you don't know what happiness is. You know, people running in the waves and surfing. And as the days went on and I had less contact with Scientologists and Scientology, I started thinking, oh, maybe they're the ones that are happy. Maybe it's me. Maybe this is all just a big fraud. And that's when it all went clang, a big loud clang for me, really. But I couldn't say anything. And then I had the baby, and I was really, really doubting whether I wanted to go back or not. And when Mum came, she said, oh, would you like to come home with the baby? And I said, oh, that would be great. So she booked the tickets, and I must have actually told them, oh, it makes me shiver, think about it. I must have told them that I was going away, and on the night before we were due to fly out, they came and banged on the door.
Jenny, come down! Jenny, we're waiting for you!
Hour after hour, you're not going, you're not going. You have to come back, you haven't done your 5 years. And then my husband came to the door and he said, don't worry, she'll be there tomorrow. And I just thought, oh my God, where's this going to end? He said, look, that's the only way to get rid of them. I want to leave too. Like, he'd never said anything to me, and I'd never said anything to him, because we weren't allowed. I think we cried for the rest of the night. And then in the morning, Mum and I came back to Christchurch. We didn't just leave, we had to actually escape. And people have to do that now.
Scientology leaders say they are an employer, and while staff are encouraged to work out their contracts, no coercion is used, and that Jenny's claims are unsubstantiated. Phil Cooper claims he had to kidnap his own family after his father, hopeful Christian, convinced them not to leave his isolated Christian community.
I grabbed my kids and fled. I had two of my friends with me, and they carried all my kids to a waiting car parked on the side of the road. It was like 2 o'clock in the morning. It wasn't like I was taking a child from a mother. I didn't see that at all. I was taking these children to give them freedom, but knowing that the mother would come, or knowing that worst case scenario, which I'd proved later on, that I would go and get the mother. Even if she didn't want to come, I would make sure I got her, and I did that 3 times. I wasn't prepared to let my father rob these kids of a mother. It was great until they tracked her down, convinced her to go back. She left a note to all the kids, laid there crying all night, hugging them, and left a note, and that was the last time we ever saw her. To suddenly be cut off from your whole family, you suddenly have lost your wife, the children have lost their mother, they're awake all night crying for their mother. What do you do? At times I doubted even my own sanity, and I even doubted whether I'd done the right thing. For someone to convince a mother to leave a 6-month-old baby and 4 other little children under the age of 9 because of her faith, that's a lot of control. My father used to do sex education, and I remember him giving her a few times a massage. And I'm sitting there and he's massaging my wife, naked. We both absolutely hated it. But I look back now and I think that's the point where she gave in.
Life on the outside can be traumatic. Once you do escape, you really are on your own. For former cult members, it can take years to recover. Escaping a cult can be like leaving the security of marriage or a family. Some return to their lives after decades of cultic indoctrination. But for others born into a cult, it can be all they've ever known.
She was pregnant and I didn't know about it. And my father kept it a secret, so he changed the name on the birth certificate's Father Unknown. Child's now 16. So I do feel the pain, knowing that all I have to do is live in the hope that she knows that we love her out here and that she has a family out here. It's tough. And I wasn't prepared to leave one behind. And I have. One behind. That's the devastation and the pain that my father has caused. But I have to live in the hope that one day she will have the freedom that her brothers and sisters have had. She's 16 and who knows, hopefully she can be a bit of a rebel like I was. If she's got anything of me in her, she might, break free, run away. And I always think about the day, and I think about it all the time when this phone call, when I get a phone call and say, "Hey, Dad, come and get me, come and get me." What person or organisation should rob someone of that joy? Her brothers and sisters have been robbed of knowing a sister. I've been robbed of the joy of a daughter. Because of why? Because my father wants to, make a law, or wants to come in and try to destroy our family. That's when you know it's wrong.
Leaving the certainty and support of a group for the absolute uncertainty of the outside world can be cripplingly traumatic.
One of the things that extremist religious groups give you is absolute certainty. You move from the inside the cult out of it, and you're just swimming. You've got nothing certain to stand on. You've got to, at the same time, deal with the fact that you've been lied to all this time. It's a massively long process to let go of this firm foundation and move on to shifting sands.
When the place broke up and I took my scarf off, I thought, I'm going to get struck by lightning. God's going to deal with me because I've taken my scarf off. It's like going through a death. You've lost 20 odd years of your life. You realise you've been conned, which is a big point. You've lost your youth, you've lost money, you've lost your identity.
So that leaves you feeling very empty, and very hurt and betrayed. And the disillusionment with that is huge. You've been lied to about something really deeply important. And I believe that the people I knew that suicided reached that place and didn't make it.
As well as feeling betrayed and ripped off, leaving can also drag up feelings of guilt and remorse, as your actions within the group no longer make sense in the clear light of day.
This guy had suicided, and I was asked by the Department of Special Affairs, could I go to the funeral? We've got to keep a lid over the suicide. We needed to make sure that Scientology wasn't brought up or the media wasn't involved in this guy's death. My voice of conscience was saying, you should not be spying at people's funerals. It's just wrong.
The dead man's family blamed Scientology for his suicide. However, the church says he had not been a member for 2 years and was a drug user. A leader initially denied sending staff to the funeral, but now says he did because of threats made to him by family members.
What a waste. That guy was a Scientologist, and there are people that don't even know he died in that group. That's how secret Scientology is. Just need forgiveness on this. I know it seems like a small thing, but it wasn't. There's no excuse. I feel I owe that family an apology. I really do. It was wrong. This is the tip of the iceberg. If you use silence, you can hide abuse. And this is just a small symptom of something much greater. Much, much greater.
I think deep down inside, I really, really honestly thought I was helping to save the planet. I thought, this is the answer. We can rid the world of war, poverty, famine, greed through Scientology. And it's just a big con.
It's basically you start your life again. New friends, get to know new people and all that. And that's when it really started opening our eyes up. I'm like, man, these people they're not worldlies at all, you know, they're just like anybody else. Everybody else, and we just got on real well, you know. I got heaps of mates there, and that's awesome.
We really came out of the commune with nothing, right, really having to start again. So I do feel like there's been a bit of a setback in my life. But at the same time, I look at my friends and my peers and I don't feel that I am stunted or anything. What kind of saddens me is that none of my generation, although I don't know one kid that escaped abuse, has pressed charges, has stood up, has said anything about it, and that's quite sad to me.
I wish that I hadn't been involved. I wish that I had used that 5 years of my life at a very, early 20s to have done something useful.
It's sort of embarrassing that you'd be involved with it for that long when the evidence was there, and 20 minutes of just inspecting the facts would have alerted me to the fact that I shouldn't have got involved. So I'm always regretful that it took me so long to discover that. But Scientology takes advantage of your good nature. It takes advantage of the fact that you are somebody that wants to help other people and you want to alleviate misery in this world. And that makes it so sinister in my view.
People say to me, "Oh, you're going to go to hell if you leave the brethren, you go to hell." I would like to say I've lived through hell. I've been there, I've experienced it. Quite frankly, I'm in heaven now.
As you have seen, even a harmless Bible group can transform into a dangerous gun cult. If you are considering joining a faith-based organisation, it is important you learn to recognise the cultic danger signs.
Do you see love bombing? Do you see time control? Do you see information control? Do you see everyone acting the same? Do you see everyone dressing to be successful or dressing in a certain way? These are all warning signs. You need to look up on the internet about the group. Take your time getting involved because there are good groups out there. There are good churches, there are good organisations, and we don't want to do anything that stops you getting involved in those. But what we want is for you to be aware of the danger signals in these groups so that you don't get involved in the first place.
During periods of great religious upheaval, such as we're going through at the moment, where a lot of the institutionalised religions seem to be dropping off in their societal influence, you can expect that there'll be more people seeking alternative religions. Now, the leaders will prey on this.